talk. The next one is from my friends at GetYourGuide. We've been doing local meetups in Berlin since the beginning of the local meetups, and GetYourGuide was the first company in Berlin to host us and do these local meetups. And now we have the pleasure of hearing from both Meghana and Tina. Meghana, it's great to see you again. Tina, it's great to see you for a first time. I'm excited for y'all's talk. I also have to keep the time very tight, so I'm just going to hand it over to you.
All right. Welcome, and super excited to be with you. So let me share my screen and jump into it. So hello, everyone. I'm Tina. I'm product manager at GetYourGuide. And today I'm here with my colleague, Meghana, who's an MLOps engineer, to talk about LLMs. How do we prioritize them and put them in production at GetYourGuide? So before we jump into the nitty-gritty stuff, just a quick note about what GetYourGuide is. It is a leading global marketplace for unforgettable travel experiences. It's basically a place that connects suppliers and travelers. And as a traveler, you can book and discover unforgettable travel experiences, from culinary excursions, booking your museum tickets, and even bungee jumping. And we believe that LLMs are key to our future success and redefining how customers discover and plan their trips. And before I go into the specific areas of opportunities where we look at prioritizing LLMs, I'd like to really break down the principles that we use when thinking about LLMs in product development. It's essentially, from our point of view, a new technology that has us asking questions like, what are the things we weren't able to accomplish in the past or were limited due to technical, budget, or time constraints? Secondly, which is a more exciting question, is like, if we were to start from scratch in this era of LLMs, how would we build our product and operations differently? And thirdly, what parts of our product and business are especially slow and not scalable? What are really the bits where we're asking ourselves, like, if we were to scale this, would we be able to scale this only with people, or is there a technology that can help us? And these are essentially the questions that are helping us uncover opportunities where this new technology can really transform our product and experience for our customers. So if we go deeper into specific use cases and areas at GetYourGuide where we're looking at LLMs being truly transformational, these are the three key bits. So first of all, how do we transform our search and discovery experience and how folks plan their trips? We believe that LLMs can truly revolutionize this, from going from basic search box input to really like a conversational experience. And to take this one step further, how can we build a new understanding of our offering that is like growing exponentially? And how do we actually translate that understanding in UX components and even advertising messaging? And lastly, how can we speed up our day-to-day exploratory work and business operations to increase the scale at which we operate the business? For example, here we're now looking at our supplier onboarding and making that experience much smoother. How can LLMs just like accelerate that 5x? And so thinking about this conceptually, we have a lot of appetite to change how we develop our product and invest more resources into this. But there's obviously risks and challenges. I think we heard about some of them in the previous talk, and we truly need to address these first. And before we dive deep into this, in terms of challenges, there's nothing new. I think the group is very aware of this, but they're very crucial for us. And so what we've seen with GPT and the likes is that without truly tight constraints, there are inaccuracies, biases, and misinformation in the output produced. And we've had an example in an exploratory internal project with GPT where we're keen to see, is there a way how we can different summarize our inventory and present USPs or unique things for our customers? And while it looked overall promising, we had red flag cases. Like, we had this one experience of watching the changing of the guards in London, which is one of the top things you do when you go to London. And when it summarized the experience to getting up close and personal with the guards. And this is not essentially what the experience was about. And even, if we were to put this in front of our customers, it would be truly damaging and not accurate. And besides this, we're also losing track of what is the source of truth. And with many LLM and supervised models interacting with each other, we are creating closed loops. And kind of losing a grip of what's happening in our product, and then what is actually the end experience for our customer. So kind of between these challenges and risks, we started discussing internally, how should we develop these products? What should be the principles when we are working with LLMs? And what are the practices we can actually put in place to deliver high quality products? And the goal of this was to kind of keep up with the pace of, putting LLM products in production, going with the flow, but, still doing that without damaging our customer trust and also our brand loyalty. And of course, these principles are to be interpreted depending on, whether you have a high risk use case or a low risk use case. So yeah, sort of we sat down and drafted these core 5 aspirational principles. And Meghana is going to talk about, some of them more into the details of what it actually means. But first of all, we are customer-centric, first and foremost. We prioritize building high-quality products by tightly scoping them out, following data product development best practices, and having very clear guardrails that tell us, are we on track or are we off track? Secondly, we build for reliability, accuracy, and safety. This is truly about ensuring we don't put any false or misleading information in front of the customer. And it's not just about misleading. It could actually lead to a place where customer books the wrong experience and they have a terrible experience because of this. And we achieve this by thorough pre-launch checks and bug bashes that are really a mix of human feedback loops and also automated checks. Third, we prioritize customer trust through transparency. It's truly about having that clarity internally, how and why models are making certain decisions. It can sometimes be truly a black box. So how can we make it less of a black box? And we believe that there are steps to get there, as things like documenting the limitations, biases, and potential errors associated with the model. This is truly especially important in the event of another team leveraging or building on top of this model. And here, I think a really good external example that we've looked at are the model cards that I think were started by the Google Cloud team and now are adopted by all of the Google data product teams. And we believe that once we have this clarity internally, we're able to also explain it to customers in simple terms. How does this product actually work that they're interacting with essentially? The fourth principle we have is that human oversight is an integral part of the development and rollout process. We believe that shipping quality products and maintaining set quality over time requires kind of that magical mix of human and machine. Humans are great at noticing weird things, patterns, and we can leverage that human intelligence to improve and fine-tune our models to deliver even higher quality output. And lastly, and most importantly, we be accountable for maintaining integrity over time. This is really about catching these model regressions. We truly need automated checks, evals, and think about LLM observability overall. And kind of with that, I can segue and give it over to Meghana, who can talk about some of these automated evals and what we're doing at GetYourGuide. Meghana, over to you.
Thanks, Tina, for the intro. Yeah, forgive me if my voice is a bit shaky today. I'm not feeling too good. Let us dive a bit deeper into the aspect of when to choose LLMs over the classical models. So the biggest bottleneck in the data science pipeline that we have is having a well-curated, good quality and good sized data set. And that takes up the bulk of the time from our data scientists and basically our capacity. So that problem is solved right now with LLMs. They help us in iterating really fast. And we are able to launch experiments really fast, and we are able to fail faster, which means we are also able to generate learnings really fast. And in case if we want to, if we decide that we want to develop our in-house models, so they're also a good way for collecting this data over time. Next slide, please, Tina. So what has changed for GetYourGuide in the LLM landscape? So I'm emphasizing mostly on OpenAI because that has gained wide acceptability within GetYourGuide. So what changed for us is we saw a great increase in the number of projects that actually used LLMs. And people across teams in GetYourGuide are coming up with innovative ways to solve their problems. And that means we also have lower burden on our data scientist teams. And now we have an established interest groups where people from diverse backgrounds get together to discuss their challenges or experiences in using AI. And basically, anybody with a coding experience can deploy a data product to production. So we have like really fast iteration cycles where we get to production really fast. So everything seems cool, but there are still some challenges. So some of them are, especially with fine-tuning models on OpenAI, they can be really expensive rather than just using GPT-3. And when the costs across teams add up, it can really get expensive for us. And OpenAI has a queue where before we submit a fine-tuning job, we have to like wait in this queue before our job actually gets submitted. So this can take considerable time, even days. So that's exactly not feasible like in the long run. And open APIs change, and this can result in changes in behavior and user experience, and not necessarily always positive. And the most frustrating part is we cannot have control over the output, and there are like some hallucinations. And once we deploy our model in production, we have like no idea what's going on in there, right? And what about the performance metrics? So we have performance metrics for, let's say, classification. We have like the F1 score or the accuracy metrics. Yes, cool. They're like a great option when you have a data set. But what when you don't have a data set? So that's why we decided to iterate with LLMs in the first place. And how do we evaluate free text? In our recent project on AI-based onboarding, where we want to give a platform for suppliers so that they can post activities on GetYourGuide without anybody from GetYourGuide as an intermediary. How do we evaluate the text that was generated by the OpenAI on behalf of the suppliers was actually of good quality? We do have some metrics called Rouge and Blue out there. But on testing, they didn't exactly correlate with the human score. So what next? We still explored, and we came across OpenAI evals. So for those interested in digging deeper, I've attached a link for the repository. So what is OpenAI evals? So OpenAI a few months ago open sourced their framework, which was like an internal benchmarking tool, where they ensured that the models that they released were were performing adequately, were on par with basically the metrics were good. So this was their internal benchmarking tool, and it provides like a systematic way in which you can structure your YAMLs so that you define your metrics, you define the eval class, which is executing along with a few short examples, and also like some samples for learning, basically. And there's like this class that you see below is nothing but a class that has like a set of prompts, which does various tasks. Next slide, please. Yeah, so you can basically use these evals out of the box. So there are like some standardized evals there, which you can use for your use case, or you can define your own evals by writing your own prompts. So all in all, it's the crux of OpenAI evals is it's just one LLM basically evaluating the performance of another LLM, but more structured and in a more in a way that follows best practices around LLM benchmarking. So next slide, please. Okay, for GetYourGuide, There's no official documentation for OpenAI evals, so which limits us to extend it or use this for use within GetYourGuide. But we are really inspired by the idea. And we went on to build something similar to OpenAI evals within GetYourGuide, which suits our use case within our organization. The way we did it was for this project called AI-based onboarding, where the model generates the free text on behalf of the supplier. So we want to test. We basically fine-tune a model that is fine-tuned on the historical data that's there as part of GetYourGuide, which contains the supplier text and the text that was corrected by a freelancer. So the data set consists of a raw text and a refined text. And the model was fine-tuned on this. And when a supplier inputs a new text, which is at the inference time, a new raw text, the fine-tuned model outputs a refined output. So how do we test how this model is doing? The best way we had till now is to do a human evaluation. And of course, this was not scalable. So we implemented the OpenAI evals kind of framework within GetYourGuide. And we came up with like a set of prompts on which basically evaluates our main model. So this basically contains multiple iterations with the human evaluator, and until you get the prompt right. And contrary to what many I heard in this conference about GPT-4, I mean, that's exactly what I used in this case, and it achieved like a good performance, especially for the scoring kind of scenario. So it also outputs like the thought process behind the scoring, which is also helpful for like the human evaluator to understand the score that was assigned. And in some cases, we also saw that it identified mistakes that was overseen by the human evaluator also. So sometimes even surpassing the human evaluator. So yeah, we got a pretty good performance overall on this evaluation framework. But yeah, the only thing is that we need to iterate a lot on the prompts and the prompt engineering that's done around this. So yeah, we have the main model, we have the evaluator model, and we have the score. So what next? So the next thing is to observe it, like have observability, and basically to monitor how this is doing when the model goes live. So we use a tool called Arise for model observability. So where we can monitor the data, where you can monitor the predictions. And this is what we'll be using also for our LLM observability. So there we can also configure the custom metrics, as you can see in the figure. Or you can like also configure thresholds and alerts. And when you see that the data point has violated a certain threshold, you can also configure alerts. And for all those data points that have violated the threshold, this can be sent for human inspection. Next slide. So all in all, our eval was basically a set of prompts which define how the scoring has to be done, and which is usually in line with a human scoring. And the output of the LLM is usually like a score, which is on the scale from 1 to 10. And when the model goes live, so all the rows which have like a threshold, which are violating the threshold, are sent for manual inspection. And here there's two things that happen. Either you iterate on the main model, or you iterate on the scoring model. And this is when we enter a cycle, and then we do it until we are satisfied with the performance of both of them. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. That's all I had for the talk. Hope you enjoyed the presentation, and any questions, please.
Awesome. Oh, so good. Thank you so much for this. I am going to wait for the questions to come through. And Meghana, thanks so much for doing this while you're not feeling super good. So I appreciate you powering through it and going over this. Now, you were mentioning, so from my side, I'm going to ask a question before the different questions come through on here. You were mentioning that you were getting this, you were getting better results from the GPT-4 evaluation than the different people that you had, the contractors that you had. Did you look at, is that because of this little paradigm that happens with GPT-4 being biased to its own output? Like, did you think about that one?
So they were not always better, but we could see that in some cases it could point out the information that was missed by the human evaluator, and we could also see that it was kind of flagging the false positives like a bit more. So yeah, I guess that was still the part that we had to work on when we say, okay, like tone down on this, like it's not that important, so it's fine. It's fine if if you don't deduct the scores for like certain aspects. But yeah, this was like a behavior which we could see that it was like generating like a lot of false positives, meaning in the sense like deducting the scores where it wasn't like really necessary. But I mean, this could still be improved with improving your prompts.
Yeah, totally. So as you, and this one, Tina, this one's more for you on the product side. Have you thought about different, I mean, you mentioned documenting stuff, and how are you looking at this ROI and being able to quantify which projects to take up and which ones to say, yeah, you know what, maybe that's not enough of a low-hanging fruit for us to actually do right now?
Yeah, excellent question. I think it really depends on kind of the use case. Whether it's like internal, external. With internal use cases, I think we have a lot more flexibility for taking risks and just letting people hack things and see how it works. As for external use cases, in terms of low-hanging fruit, I think with LLMs, while there is like upfront investment you need to make with observability, I think over time the cost just reduces. So I think it's more about really strategic thinking and seeing like where you want your business to be and like what are the biggest blocks that are slowing you down. And I think Meghana mentioned this AI supplier onboarding. That has been definitely one of the parts of our business that we're keen on accelerating. So that's essentially how I would look at it.
Mm-hmm. So we've got one that's coming through the chat here that is, let me see if I can interpret this correctly. What were the parametric it was benchmarked on? So I'm not sure if that makes sense to you. We may need some clarification on that. And in the meantime, Ramat, if you can clarify that. There are a few other questions that came through here. What are the validation metrics that are used for GPT-4?
So we are not like evaluating like GPT-4, but more like the evaluation for the output from the main model. And we are basically using GPT-4 to do that. And so this is being done by prompt engineering and also like feeding in some context about like, yeah, the information of how the scoring has to be done. And these metrics are defined by our internal content team, which is very relevant to how a content has to be presented. And this is like our own metrics, and it's also our internally we are defining how these has to be scored and how much weight each aspect of the scoring has to take on.
Excellent. And you mentioned hallucinations in the talk. How do you guarantee that LLMs, which you are using, aka GPT-4, I think, for evaluation, don't hallucinate in the evaluation process?
So absolutely, yeah, they can hallucinate. So that's why, we have like this threshold, right? And then we, for for all the data points that are violating the threshold, that's below the threshold, then we inspect them. And like I said, the observations are more like false positives, which means we're more likely to see lesser scores rather than like higher scores, which also kind of limits our risk. So I guess this observability tool really helps us to understand hallucinations on either front, and also like this human in the loop process and thresholding, which can help us basically solve this.
So this next question is awesome. And I guess I can add a little bit to it, maybe to make it easier for you. But on a scale of 1 to 5, how reliable is it to use LLMs for evaluating other LLMs' output? And then you can elaborate, maybe. Give us the number and then elaborate on why that number is the one you chose.
I mean, so far, considering the metrics that we used, I mean, of course, there can be still other methods to do this, and we are still open to try them. But of all the things that we tried so far, from the standard metrics, out of the box metrics, and like a model graded one, this worked out for us the best. It's I would say it's still not perfect in the sense, it has like false positives. But I think that's something which we can handle for us as a business. So I think it's like around 7 or 8 out of 10. The deduction is like because it has like false positives, but that's something that that our business can take. And of course, like your prompt engineering and refining is also very important to get the level of performance, and that's also where like bulk of your time goes in developing something like this.
100%. Yeah, 7 out of 10 ain't bad. I mean, that's a pretty good number. So, last question, Tina. I think this one is for you. How do you ensure that the cost does not just get out of hand when you go into production?
Yeah, good question. I think first of all, we tried to evaluate before launching how much the cost could scale, and I think there's like a lot of things you can do with caching and like optimization to kind of bring down the cost. And one thing we do at GetYourGuide always is we have a good overview and monitoring of the cost of different services. And anytime there's a spike, we try to understand where is this spike coming from, how we can bring it down, and then see are there use cases that are actually not needed, and we can kind of keep it within bounds of normal cost, and then the ROI is decent.
Incredible. So I will just mention that this talk was awesome when it comes to evaluating LLMs and how you all are doing it in the wild, in production. I love hearing about it. And I also want to talk about how we have an evaluation survey that fits right in with this. I think maybe even, Meghana, you may have filled it out and even if you didn't, just say yes, because nobody's going to know the difference. So if we can pull my screen onto the screen, I will go through just a few of these cool questions with you all because it fits perfectly with it. And I want to make sure everybody can see this. So you can see things like, what data are you using to evaluate your LLMs? How are you using it? And then here, do you have ground truth labels for your data? Here's a great one. Are you using human evaluators? And so it's just like so right up your alley with this talk, and you all are doing it. There's a ton of other people that are trying to figure this out with you. And if you haven't filled out the survey yet, I encourage you to go do it. We also have all of this data. It's free for you to check out, and that is not it. That's my run of show. This is all of that data you can go and you can look at right now if you want, and we'll drop all these links in the chat. But for now, Tina and Meghana, thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on. Yeah.